Yeah, so you're probably thinking bourbon honey brisket? What is that? Well, in the past I've done a bourbon coffee brisket, and it doesn't use any actual liquid bourbon. There is a bourbon powder that I found, and it works really well in rubs, but I also found something from the same company, Old Town Spice Shop in Missouri, Honey Granules. So we're gonna combine those when we make our rub here, so we're gonna have a bourbon honey brisket. So let's get started on that rub. And we're starting with a 1/4 cup of kosher salt, a tablespoon of ground black pepper, a tablespoon of smoked paprika, and 3 tablespoons of bourbon powder. This is bourbon powder. It's just a very white powder. If you smell it, it smells like bourbon. I don't know how they make it, but it's really good in rubs. You can also add it to sauces, things like that. And now 2 tablespoons of honey granules. These are the honey granules right here. You can see they're just little granules. That's 2 tablespoons. Gonna put the lid on our container and shake. That is the easiest way to mix this rub. It also keeps that very fine bourbon powder from flying everywhere. And we shake. You see a little bit of that powder shooting out there. That's what I'm looking for. Let's go ahead and get our brisket out here, get it trimmed up, and get it seasoned. So here is our brisket. It's a 14.5 pound USDA Prime. And I'm just gonna go ahead and trim this up here. I'm not gonna talk a lot. I've always said I'm not an expert brisket trimmer. I'm a backyard cook, so I do a job that's good enough for me. If you really want to trim, briskets competition style and super clean and everything, that's cool. But I just like to do a good job, as good a job as I can, so that I can move on to the next step. They always taste great, so I don't worry a whole lot about trimming and getting every tiny little piece off. But let's get to it, and maybe I'll throw some music on while I'm trimming. All right, there we go. Good enough for me. Let's get our seasoning on it. So I have my brisket on a rack in a tray, and this is what it's gonna rest on going into the refrigerator overnight, because yeah, just like most times, I'm getting this ready the day before. It's gonna hit the grill tomorrow morning. So I'm just going to use my hand here, and we don't need a binder on this, or at least I don't. I generally only use a binder when I really need to. There's good surface moisture here. I'm happy with it. And what's gonna happen with some of these honey granules is they're gonna start dissolving with that moisture in the meat. Get our fat side. And if you've watched my brisket videos, you know I usually do fat side down on the grill. That's what I'll be doing tomorrow. I like to protect the bark on the meat side, because when you move the brisket, you might mar that bark, and I don't want to do that. I want the bark on the meat side to really shine, to really hold together as good as possible. But if you like to do it, fat side up, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just personal preference to me. We can have variety in barbecue. A little flap there from processing, look at that. Let's get a little seasoning under there. Oh man, that bourbon smell is just coming up now as it's hitting the moisture on the brisket. And I know a lot of people aren't fans of a sweet sort of rub on a brisket, but I do like that, and that honey is gonna be really nice on this. All right, this is going in the refrigerator overnight. Gonna soak in some of these flavors there, especially that salt in the rub. And tomorrow, I'll see you out at the grill. So the Camp Chef Woodwind Wi-Fi 24 is up to temp. My temperature is set at 250 degrees today, and my smoke level is set to 3. On this pellet grill, you can set the smoke level from 1 to 10, and I find 3 or 4 is usually pretty good. The higher you go, the more temperature swings you get, but if you want more smoke, you can definitely dial it up. Let's go ahead and get our honey bourbon brisket on. I have a small water pan in the back left corner of the grill, just to add a little bit of moisture in there, and if I need to refill that throughout the day, I will. So I'm not running an internal temperature probe today. I'm just gonna be going based upon the color and texture. That's what I'm gonna wrap. It'll probably be somewhere in that stall range of 150 to 160. We'll come back in about 2 hours and we'll see if we need to spritz. And the ultimate internal temperature I'm going for today is probably gonna be around 203, but it's really about tenderness. When it is time to wrap this today, we're going inside to the oven. It's gonna be wrapped in butcher paper, just resting in a foil pan to catch any drips. And we'll be finishing it in there because, well, at that point, heat is just heat. It's wrapped, it's not getting any more smoke. And it's much easier if you wanna do it that way. There's nothing wrong with continuing on the pellet grill. I've done that many times on all my grills, but it's gonna be really toasty outside today, probably close to 100 degrees, so I'm gonna enjoy the air conditioning while this finishes in the oven. Oh, and I didn't mention the wood I'm using today is a mixture of pellets. It is the charwood pellets with straight hickory pellets. So I'll see you back here in a couple hours when it's time to see if we need to spritz. All right, we've been going 2 hours, and I forgot to mention, pellet grills have a fan, so you might hear some fan noise. But let's go ahead and see how our honey bourbon brisket is doing. That's looking really good. It is looking a little dry right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and spritz with some plain water. We're developing nice color, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this up and we're gonna check it again in 2 hours. All right, we are at the 4-hour mark now. Let's go ahead and check our honey bourbon brisket, see if we're ready to wrap. Oh, I am liking that color. Let me just get our water pan out of there, it's empty. And I just wanna do a reference check on temperature because this is looking really nice right now, so I'm definitely gonna wrap, but I wanna see where we're at. So we're showing 159, so we should be right about at the stall right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I'm gonna get it inside in the oven with a temperature probe in it because I will be tracking the temperature from this point forward. When we hit about 203 inside, that's when we'll probe for tenderness. So let's wrap this up. I'm gonna give the paper a quick spray here. Let's get some moisture in it. It's just that same spritzing liquid, just water. And as I roll it, I wanna keep the same orientation, fat side down, so I want the meat side up when I finish. And that's going inside in the oven at 250 degrees. And I'll see you back when we hit about 203 internal. So here is our brisket. I've taken the temperature probe out because even if I decide it needs more time, I'm not gonna measure temperature at that point. We hit 203 degrees. We would just go by time, maybe in 30-minute increments. But let's see how we're doing here. And one thing I wanna point out, I forgot to show this on camera, is I usually put little foil balls underneath these wrapped briskets when they're in a foil pan so that they don't sit in any collected juice. And I didn't do it outside, so once it was in the oven, I remembered and I put the little foil balls under there. And now let's see how tender we are. We're just gonna go up here to the point first and get through the paper. That is pretty tender. Let's go down to our flat. That's actually feeling pretty tender too. Oh yeah. You can see our temp right there is showing 211 in the point. And our temp in the flat is showing 205. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover this with foil and it's gonna go back in the oven that's turned off. So there's just that residual heat there that's cooling down now, and it's gonna sit for 2 hours. I'm gonna do 2 layers of foil. I like to do that. All right, this is going back in the oven, which has been turned off. It's gonna sit there for 2 hours. And I'll see you back here after that so we can open it up, cut in, and have a taste. All right, after 4 hours on the grill, 6 hours in the oven at 250, the same temperature as on the grill, and a 2-hour rest for a total of 12 hours, we are here. Let's open this up and take a look at this honey bourbon brisket. That looks good. Now, something I've started doing, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 briskets and pork butts is checking the temperature after the rest just to see how much temperature it held. Let's see. Okay, that is still showing 187 degrees after 2 hours. So briskets, pork butts, large cuts of meat can really hold their temp for a long time as long as you insulate them. If this had been in, say, an empty cooler wrapped in towels and foil and everything, you could hold it for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, and in dedicated hot boxes, even longer than that. So we've still got a really toasty brisket here. Let's get it out of here and onto the cutting board. So I'm very happy with the color of this brisket. The bark turned out nice here. I'm just gonna slice straight across here, and you can tell this is a smaller brisket after trimming. We started at 14.5 pounds. We're at about, I'm guessing 12.5, 13 pounds when we went into the smoker. I don't know what it weighs now, but we've got a very short flat end beyond the point. The point is ending right about here. So a lot of times you'll have a little bit longer. We don't have that today, so let's just cut in. Let's see how we did. Oh, nice. We got a nice smoke ring there. Now, one of the things I always like to do is separate the flat from the point, and I'm gonna go ahead and do that here. We've got it in 2 sections. So I'm just gonna follow my knife along that fat seam, remove our flat. Same thing on this side. Just follow that along. Put our flat over here. And remember, if you have juice saved in the pan that this was sitting in, just like I had it resting in those foil pans, save that juice. If your flat ends up a little dry, you can use that juice to moisten it up a bit. But let's go ahead and cut some point here, because point's my favorite. Oh yeah. I'm gonna cut a few pieces here for tasting, and then I'll cut some flat. There is a definite juice-a-lanch on my board tonight. Let's slide the rest of our point over here. Oh, although, wait a minute, I gotta cut another piece of this part of the point. That looks really good right there. Nice barky piece. And then let's cut some of this flat right here. Got a nice and bendy piece of flat there. Let's see. Yep, nice and tender. That is what I want. Now that I've created a brisket murder scene on my cutting board, it's time to taste. I got a piece of that flat right here. Let's go. You do get the bourbon and honey, but I remember this from a previous video I did using that bourbon powder. You always think it's gonna be too much. I would go more. I would go more bourbon powder, more honey. There's a nice hint of it, but I think over time it gets diluted. You could double it and I think you'd be fine. But let's try that point. Look at that point. That just looks great. Here we go. You know, after a 12-hour day making this, it really helps when it tastes this great. And it just turned out terrific. I'm very happy with this. Again, the key to brisket, time plus temperature equals tenderness. And all of that comes with patience. You gotta let it have that time to get tender so you get this taste.